Thank you for joining me today and participating in this call. Congratulations on receiving the Associate January Spotlight. We're so honored to have you working for our company. Glad that you can be on this call and share a little bit more about yourself.
Thank you for inviting me. Excited about this spot and also excited about the future of Adafio and my little space in it as an employee.
Well, you've done so much already, and it's exciting, to see the direction that we're going and just the opportunities abound with your skill set, and then the trajectory of what's happening for the next few years, if not longer. Will you give me a little background on who Joseph Lindquist is and what you do for Adafio?
Okay, I'm from Fort Smith, Arkansas, so I'm an Arkansas native. Been here my whole life. I grew up in Fort Smith, Arkansas, and from there I came to school here for the university starting around 2000. From that, I had a degree in music and also in biology. Shortly after finishing up my gig at the university, I started working at the university itself in the athletic department. And from that, I became their IT director, and that was 14 years of with my career there starting. So with that, I've seen all things IT. I've seen the not things that are not IT. So I've really had my hands in a lot of pieces here, and that's kind of what's made me who I am today.
Biology and music, and it just shows you, it proves that you don't necessarily follow your degree, right? I mean, going into IT and tech is a complete difference. But do you see any similarities between them at all with music and technology?
Yeah,
nope, not really.
There are some similarities within that. I think that when you're really involved with playing music, especially like in a symphony orchestra, for example, it really highlights different parts of your brain where you start to become more involved, like problem solving and just things of that general. It really just almost rewires of how you think and who you are as an individual. Playing in a symphony orchestra, being an upright bass player at that time, really was like the core foundation piece. And so I think throughout life, I really look for that, finding those foundation pieces. Even when I'm now in technology, most of the time when we're dealing with problems, they're not necessarily directly an IT problem. Of course, we have things that break and things that are not functioning the way we want them to, or the intent of the design. But you have to decouple that a little bit.
Yeah.
And during that process, you kind of start to find, or I find that, what else is there that's, becoming a problem that's also being involved with the technology pieces to it. So I think that's kind of the analogy I have in the back of my mind. It's also like a big puzzle piece, you're trying to put together in life. And, it's just those foundation pieces. You have to always start at the border, work your way around and start filling the little pieces
Very
around.
Good. So, that's really the best way you described it, because if anybody does puzzles, which I would venture to guess that most people at Adafio would describe their job role as something to do with like a puzzle. That's usually the metaphor they use. So what do you like most about your job?
Being a senior systems engineer, I really like the team I'm involved in right now is the project team. So a lot of times when we have a new client that we're onboarding to Adafio, or even an existing client that we have some type of unique problem, we try to turn those into projects. So if it's a new client, we're doing assessments. We're trying to really identify where they're at with technology and all the little pieces that come into that. And if it's a current client, a lot of times those are even more straightforward. It's like, hey, we have this project we've been thinking about for a couple of months, and we need help to lift and shift us to the next phase of where we're going to be from a technology standpoint. So I enjoy those roles. And that's really the fun thing I enjoy about that, just in all the gamut spaces of that. I think also working with the people, our clients, and even the internal staff that we have are really key pieces to why I have enjoyment at Adafio. Like I mentioned earlier, there's always problems that are outside of IT that somehow introduce themselves into what we're trying to solve. And that's just something I guess is a takeaway of why I enjoy it working at Adafio. Is I like to have my hands in all the pieces, working through a problem or architecting some type of solution for our clients.
Well, and it shows you that a system is all symbiotic. So everything that has to work together. It's not like just that it's a strictly technological breakdown. It could be a administrative or people breakdown. What is it, and then how can you then identify that and then fix it? So it's like psychology in a sense. There's a lot more therapy involved than just plugging in a computer.
Well, it's a never-ending process as well. That's something that technology is always changing. We always see that change, but We step back, even organizations, our clients, they're also in that same, moment of change, even outside of IT. So those fall hand in hand.
So 6 months. That's a short amount of time considering you spent 14 years at the university. Do you see, I'm just curious to know of the things that you've learned since coming here, because after being somewhere for 14 years, it's like you feel like you may know all that you can know at a company, but now that you're here, you see that you've seen.
From a career standpoint, technology, what I was doing previously at the university was
Yeah.
secondary to our goal. Being at Adafio, there's a very big contrast between that because now I'm being
Yeah.
surrounded with people that are technologists. Sometimes in that room, I'm surrounded with people that have more knowledge of certain areas than I do. And, sometimes the tables are flipped and I have a little bit more knowledge in certain areas than they do. And, that's a fun thing about being at Adafio is that, we are a team and we
Hmm.
try to take everything on as we're working together as a group trying to solve a problem. And, like I mentioned earlier, never stopping. I think the biggest piece about Adafio is we are really pushing ourselves to never stop learning
Yeah.
technology. You always hear the messaging that, technology changes so fast, I can't keep up with it. Well, if you're a layperson, that's very true. But even at Adafio, a lot of our associates, when they are working together, we're never stopping. That never stops. That learning process is continuously happening all the time, even if we're not aware of it as individuals.
Hmm.
So that's something that I think is a very positive thing of why, I chose to change. And let's just be honest. I mean, COVID has really changed, or the pandemic has really changed a lot of the things of how we approach life. We really
Yeah.
start to step back and analyze work-life balances, what brings us value as individuals. And that's something that, during that little space of, I guess you could call it a self-assessment, I really stepped back and just said, hey, what is meaningful for me and what gives me value?
Oh yeah,
And,
I think everybody took us.
Dafio, yeah, but Dafio fills a big space for that.
We changed it a while back, but it's to be a trusted partner for proven and emerging technology solutions, because we are always advancing and it's always innovative. That there's
Mhm.
something new around the corner, and you guys, as a team, whether it's a project team, whatever team that you happen to be working with, you're constantly communicating and sharing your knowledge and supporting each other through this journey. That you happen to know something a little bit more in one particular avenue, and then maybe Zach Green has something that he knows more in wireless, or however you guys are able to support and pick up. And not only that, like for me in the marketing, you've always been so great about, well, why don't we have a conversation over this? It's something that our clients may not really even realize they need to know it, but we can recommend it, and then their knowledge is power. And it's brilliant that you guys can, and really wonderful that you guys can support each other on that journey and not look at it as a competitive sort of approach. That
Absolutely.
everybody's, in it to work together to make the client. So, which leads me to best career lesson that you've ever learned. I mean, you could just kind of venture back on what you've learned in for best career lesson.
I think I kind of hinted at it earlier, being surrounded by
Hmm.
people that are a little bit smarter than you,
Yeah.
because to be a leader, uh, you have to really understand that you don't know everything, and that's never going to be something that's going to be achievable in life. Being surrounded with people that bring value to the conversation matters,
Hmm.
and that gives me space to really step back and form my thoughts. I really enjoy team building. I think if I have a highlight from what I've done throughout my steps, my career path, is even if I have people that don't know much about IT, and I've always
Hmm.
enjoyed, bringing them up to the level and sharing that knowledge. I've had some of my peers call me their IT dad in some
Yeah, like
ways,
a
which is kind
mentor.
of where, yeah. And that's kind of fun because, it gives that team building, in the background. It really starts just that collaboration that needs to happen. But when you start improving the talent level of your peers around you, it's just a value gain for everyone on that
Yeah.
page. And I think that those happen because you have to have the correct foundation for that to occur. And I've always been a promoter of that and forming that space within my career. So I think that's my biggest takeaway because, and you can have some rock stars on your team and you can have some people that just aren't pulling their weight. But at the end of the day, you see that piece versus the positive pieces. And so that's something I really try to strive for within my career. And just that's something I've always learned when I first had that spark. And it's like, aha, this is happening. And this is what
Yeah.
brings value. That's something I've always tried to seek.
It's a great skill set and strength of your strength finders, to know, to understand and know like where you can be of value and leverage that. If you weren't in this career of technology, what do you think you'd be doing?
Yeah, that's interesting because I've definitely had some changes where I think when I was younger during my college days, I thought I was going to be a professional upright bass player in a symphony.
Hmm.
Then I came to realize around 2007, 2008, when the economy started going south and my symphony I played in went bankrupt, unfortunately, I realized there's only about 30 symphonies in the whole country that you could have a career that pays for everything and actually be
Wow.
solvent. And so that was definitely a moment where I stepped back and said, maybe music is not necessarily something I want to do from a career standpoint. And I had other groups that I played with, like the Barrio Band and whatnot, which is like a Latin salsa band. And that was fun to do on the side, and I had a lot of fun doing that, but that just wasn't a career step. And if I wasn't doing what I was doing today with technology, I think a lot of the pieces that drive me are politics. I mean, if you really get to know me personally, I know both sides of the argument. And sometimes I really can see through, and I try to, like mentioned earlier, surround yourself with other people that have different viewpoints, different
Absolutely.
knowledge levels.
Diversity, yeah,
But I think
intellectual
politics
diversity.
would be a huge player for that. When I was a little boy, I always had this dream of being the president one day. Well, that's probably not going to happen. But that's definitely something that if I wasn't doing IT back then when I was making that transition out of music, or even just thinking about a career, I probably would have made that step. So,
That's well, and it's never too late. I
mhm.
mean, you could be on the city council, and that could certainly be of value, and then it grows from there. And having a politician that happens to know IT has got to be it's
Yeah.
got to be a win-win. Do you ever anticipate possibly doing anything like running for an office, even at the city level?
I've looked at some city level. I guess I would be more excited at maybe like a state level, being a
Hmm.
representative. I have a lot of friends that have done that in the past, and I've always had those good connections with them as a friendship, and just being able to sit down when I have my free time, wherever that's at, and talk
Yeah,
with those people. It's a lot of fun. The conversation goes. Because I think at the core, I'm really a people person. I care about people. I want people
yeah,
to be happy in their life. I want them to be successful in their lives. And that's just something I think natively would fall into that route if I
it certainly
became
would.
a representative. Yeah. So,
And I feel it even now with this pandemic. We've got representatives that I follow on certain platforms, and they keep you updated and abreast of all of the different changes that are happening. And that's just such a servant leadership and wonderful thing to provide us, because knowledge, like we said, is power. But if I don't have that, how am I going to access it? And so to have a place that you get real and truthful information from a reliable source, your state representative, it matters. So I'm always saying thank you to their hard work and dedication. Yeah. So what do you do if you're not working in technology and not playing the bass? Would you like to do in your free time?
it's kind of definitely changed during the pandemic, but I guess I can go back prior to that since we're still in this bubble of, COVID.
Right.
But a lot of that is spending time with my friends and my family. I'm a people person. The people in my bubble I care about deeply, and just being around them. That brings so much value. If we get specific in certain activities, I guess I like to be outdoors. That's always a fun spot. If it's going up to the lake here in Northwest Arkansas, or just if it's just walking around somewhere, that's a
Mm.
beautiful spot. We have so many locations here that are really unique, and we're so fortunate to have that here in Northwest Arkansas. If it's close to some waterways, sometimes I'll try to get my Jeep a little too close to the water and have fun with that, hopefully not break anything.
Yeah.
But all those things kind of happen. But I think the big message from that is being around other people.
Yeah,
That's
it
where I
feeds
get
your
my
soul.
blessing. Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And having a Jeep is always a nice thing. I had one pre-Adafio, and then I
Hmm.
traded it in for a more reliable, safer car that had better commuting, were a little more economical.
Hmm.
But after COVID hit, I was like, God, if I could just get that Jeep, I could be like out, on the roads when we're all quarantined. You can at least get out in your car and travel and get off in the get off on the rough roads and backwoods and stuff, which I never really took advantage of it when I had it.
Yeah,
Oh
and
well.
you're definitely right that the reliability of Jeeps are probably not where they should be, and you'll never catch me bragging or even talking about how many miles per gallon I get with my current
Yeah.
Jeep because that's just something you don't even want to think about.
Yeah. But I think in some people's life, it's important that we've all can say, I've owned a Jeep at least, at some point in my life. So I can mark
Hmm.
that off on my list of things that I've done. Have you ever owned a Jeep? Yes. Would I
Yeah.
do it? Would I again? Yes. It just would not be my main vehicle.
Hmm.
It'd be my secondary vehicle when that time comes. But you have a personal motto that you go by?
Yeah, and it's something I use probably quite a bit. If you're in the office with me and we run into a problem, or if something's actually working really well, it always comes back to trust but verify. You always have to have that insight. Is it working exactly the way we want it to work? Or if it's something that somebody says, were they completely right when they said that? And I know that trust but verify has, a lot of that time based upon when Reagan was in office, and you kind of see some politics there, especially when we're doing like Soviet issues and whatnot with nuclear
Yeah.
weapons. But trust but verify is something that slips out of my mouth probably at least once a week.
Well, and it makes sense. We should all live a little bit closer to that. But I guess the question is, where do we get our verification? Like, how do
Mm,
you what do you verify it, and who are you verifying it with? Because now anymore, everybody's questioning the source.
sure.
And in some with technology, you can trust and verify by if it works, if it's broken, and you fix it, and then like, is it automating properly or whatever
Mm,
it may be. But when it comes to trust in the news and what's happening, like with Russia, it's hard to know like where you're getting the right information and if it's true or not. But you're a good
mm,
read on people. You can tend to trust your intuition too. You know,
yeah,
make
and
sense of things that.
there's so much
Mhm.
information out now. I mean, it's almost like we're in a washing machine and people just keep throwing clothes inside, and it's like we're just like in this washing machine of
Yes.
information and statements and whatnot. And I think the younger generations are doing a better job of, verifying things because they have social media and it's always popping up on their phone or their, tablet or whatnot.
Oh,
But I think people that are our age, we're having to kind of step back into that role and be like, is this actually factual or is this,
right.
truthful, at that point? And so that's something I always kind of step back and think about.
Yeah. What three words would you say best describe you? And did you
Ooh,
pick these or did somebody help you pick yours?
I think that I did come up with these this morning when I was scrambling to get all the responses in. Definitely being a leader is one that came to mind first. Current role and even my previous roles. That's something I've always been involved with in leadership. I've been always motivated, because that's something I'm always pushing myself forward and trying to find that next step, that next improvement. And, being ambitious as well. I think those two kind of play hand in hand. Well, they all play hand in hand together.
They do.
So that was something that, I think I've always had this trend to be very driven, both in life and also in my career. Through my career, I've always been motivated with, huge projects. One thing I've always been excited about was even the last project I had to do with public facing Wi-Fi. It was designed to have 70,000 individuals connected to it at once. And that's something
That's very
was a
daunting.
big undertaking. And
Yes.
I can dabble in networking. I can do a lot of things in networking, but at my core, I'm really like a systems architect if I had to come up with a title.
Hmm.
But that was something where even I had to be motivated to pick up new skill sets.
Sure.
Understand RF space or radio frequency space. I'm sorry for
Yeah.
Wi-Fi and how that works. But and then the other piece is even in my career, I've been really driven to develop teams that
Okay.
perform at a high level. And like I mentioned earlier, that comes back into, sometimes training teams, just giving them that space so they can be effective, empowerment of those teams is very,
Empowering, right? Trusting that they can, and you do come across, and I sense it even, not just come across, but calm and collected. And you've got a very even nature where you don't seem to get rattled and you don't allow things to fester you. So it helps people be more comfortable when they're not having to, navigate a strange, different personalities or.
I have that. I think that's something I project outbound a lot. But even internally, I have
But
my
you're
moments where,
paddling underneath. No, I'm just
yeah,
kidding.
a little bit, we all have those moments, and it's something that you have to learn how to control that energy, in
Yeah,
life. Because if you let that become part of who you are, you really don't have the vision of seeing what exactly is in front of you.
that's true.
If you ask my partner, my girlfriend, she probably will tell you all the times when I get frustrated. I'm sitting on the front porch after hours going, geez, this is went sideways and this was not great. But I have those moments where I decompress, and we all have that and whatnot.
Yeah, and talk about
Yeah.
it too. Isn't it help sometimes just to speak it out loud and then let it go? I think, holding it in sometimes is ill effective. So tell me what or who made you smile today?
Well, it was probably either something that Allison did or something that Cat Sugar did. I think every morning when I get out of bed, I have the cat, which is right next to me, but she's asleep, so
Yeah.
I don't want to wake her up.
Oh,
She is very vocal. She's a snowshoe. I don't know if you know much about
I
cats, but
don't, but I want to
yeah,
Google it now.
they are very vocal. And so I think she's always aware when I'm getting up first, because that's typically
Uh-huh.
what happens in our house. And she's very vocal about wanting her tweets. So she has to have a temptation, and she will do this meowing until I do that. And if I get tied up or I'm busy, it will not stop. And so I'll bring the temptations out and say, "Here you go, sugar." And then
Oh
we're
my
fine for
gosh.
probably an hour or two, and then that process repeats. And I think every time that happens, I have a little grin on my face.
That's so sweet. And I guess during COVID, being home a lot, it just really spoiled them, didn't it? Or maybe it didn't. Maybe she was like, "What are you doing here all the time?"
Yeah, cats definitely have that time where they're like, "No, no, 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 I'm gonna go hide in the corner here or find a box that you
Yeah,
just
I've
got
had
from
enough
Amazon."
of my
So,
yeah.
uh,
Had enough
you know,
people time.
and if anything, she's probably the vet when we take her back will get back onto me about the fact that she's gained 2 pounds or
Gain
something.
two.
I don't know what happened here, but boy, she's a mess. Yeah, she's
Yeah.
special.
We'll end our interview with one final question that I ask everybody. Actually, I have two.
Okay.
Okay, so, but let's start with the one that I tend to share with everybody, and that is when you come to Adafio, we usually have a story of what brought us here. And if you wouldn't mind sharing your story.
I probably hinted at it a little bit earlier. I
Yeah.
think a lot of that was related to the pandemic. That was a moment where everyone, I
Mm,
think, at once had a moment where they thought about work-life balance.
yeah,
Because we did have a moment in life where we were just everything changed, and it just
it
happened
did.
like overnight. So thinking about work-life balance, what does that mean? What am I doing from a career standpoint? Who are the people I'm surrounding myself with? And just all those questions. I mean, that's probably a laundry list that I had that I was just in my free time coming up with myself. I had an engagement with the Dafia leadership probably about 5 years ago. I could have pulled the lever at that time, but I had some projects I wanted to take on still at my previous job. And so I didn't do that. But I think the pandemic really reset that moment for me. And I analyzed and I was just like, I want to be around people that are like minded. I want to be around people that do the same thing I do. I don't want to just be part of an organization that does IT on the side. And that's the unique thing about Adafio is that's really at 90% of what we're doing.
Yeah.
There's other units at Adafio, they're not technologists, of course, but that's a whole flip flop of 180 of what it was at the previous gigs that I had. And so I
Hmm.
think that's something that really motivated me to take a chance with Adafio. It was helpful that I've had, a good friend, Austin Bailey, that
Yep.
works at Adafio and kind of gave me the rundown. So I let him go at that 5 year period and figure everything out for me. And I came in and did all the follow up. Everything I heard was good, and it was better than good. It excelled in a lot of spaces that were valuable to me, and so that's the reason why I made that jump at that time. And then when I started the just the engagement during the interview process, I got to meet people like Paul Peterson, Mike Trickett, and just the whole leadership team, and meeting people like you and seeing the
Mhm.
content you deliver. There was just a lot of maturity there, but even with that maturity, there's still space to grow. And that's
Oh,
where Adafio
absolutely.
is.
Yeah. If there were somebody looking to change careers, or let's say a student that has a degree and or looking to get a degree in computer science or IT, do you have any advice that you would give them?
In any career that you're going to do, so maybe this is a little bit different, but even if it's not IT, don't be afraid to jump in and see what it really is like for yourself.
Hmm.
If you pinpoint this even down to technology, things are what one technologist does versus another technologist at different employers or whatnot drastically is different.
Yeah.
So, you really, if you're wanting to do a job in technology, let's see if we can define it to that level, make sure that you're in a career that is not going to pinhole you in one solution that you're always going to just be doing this one thing that's a widget that you're always going to be making, if you think of it that way. But really allow yourself to be open to change. What I did when I first started being a technologist is I was really big on on-prem infrastructure. I was really big in Active Directory and joining machines to that and making policies that worked and all this fun stuff. But throughout the now 15 years of me being a technologist, it's changed almost every year what I've been doing. And there's always that piece that's kind of lingering that you drag along with you, that legacy technology, if you want to call it that. But who would imagine that I was doing that for the beginning of my career. Then I got into really big into virtualization technologies. So,
Hmm.
having a hypervisor and, if it's VMware or if it's Hyper-V, supporting virtual machines in that space before we had cloud offerings, right?
Right.
And then, seeing that transition into networking, building out PCI networks for security for credit card processing, expanding that into public facing Wi Fi and doing that in a very mature space. And now I see my role really pivoting into more of like the cloud offerings. It's the same, it mirrors what we did when we had on-prem infrastructure, but now it's different in the fact that we're putting our workloads in the cloud essentially. And we're paying for
Right.
that as a subscription, but it's a whole different way of architecting solutions. And I've even the piece I really haven't dabbled in heavily, but I've always had in the back of my mind is security. So you have to be aware that whatever you do in technology, it's always going to change. And you have to be ready for that change. And you have to look forward for that change. Because if you're not looking forward for it, you're going to be left in the dust. But the good thing is it's never stagnant. You're always having
Hmm.
to push yourself and finding that motivation internally. Surrounding yourself with people that are smarter than you and learning from them. So I think that's the advice I would give anybody that's thinking about technology. But it's also the important thing is finding an employer that gives you that space because what we do is so unique. You have to have an employer that's dedicated towards continuous education because that's never ending in
Uh,
technology.
Thank you so much for your time. And again, congratulations on the January spotlight. We'll get to celebrate you, share your story with everybody to get to know you a little bit better, which I think is highly valuable right now when we're still so separate. There's opportunity and there's so many great, wonderful people at this company that don't have often have an opportunity to meet in person or
But even
project
then,
team. But
there's people that I don't get to meet. I
yeah,
mean, like we have so many people in Little Rock that even though we're the same company up here in Northwest Arkansas, I just don't get to meet them. I get to see them in meetings, but that's still not the same.
it's still not the
Um,
same.
and
It's
there are
true.
people that we have on our, help desk or our knock that I've never met. So
Hmm.
it's good to have these engagements. Yeah.
I agree. All right, Joseph. Well, tell Allison hello, and I can't wait to see you guys face to face soon.
All right.
Until then, have a wonderful rest of your day.
All right. You too. Thank you,
Thanks.
Melissa.
Bye.